More emergency meal kits to save the day when things get rough. Hey guys, it's Jara with Wicked Prepared. Welcome to the channel, everyone. Today I'm putting together some more meals in a bag, aka emergency meal kits. I have a passion for creating meals from only shelf-stable ingredients. My meals in a bag contain everything you need to cook a complete meal, down to and including any water needed to prepare the meal. So whenever you're faced with a disaster or emergency, whether it's a severe weather event or an orchestrated grid down event, or even a personal financial crisis, you'll always have a way to feed your family. The first meal kit I'm making today, I call American Chop Suey, but you may know it by another name. Some people call it Chop Suey, some people call it Goulash, and there are even more different names for this dish that I've heard, but I can't remember. Let me know down in the comments what you call this dish where you're from and how you make yours. Everyone has their own variation of this recipe, usually handed down through generations. And today I'm going to show you my version. So let's get started. These are all the ingredients I'm going to use for my American Chop Suey. I've got a can of Keystone ground beef here. This is the large 28-ounce can. And I've got some elbow macaroni, plain macaroni. This is a pint jar, so I just filled it right up to the top because I wanted about 2 cups of macaroni, and this holds 2 cups. I have got a can of classic Campbell's tomato soup. This is my Grammy's recipe that I grew up with since I was a little kid, and this is how I still make it today. I use tomato soup. Some people use something different like tomato sauce, but this is how we do it. And I also have a can of diced tomatoes here. This is the regular 14.5 ounce size can, and I'm using the Italian style petite diced instead of plain. My Grammy always used plain diced tomatoes or whole tomatoes. I like to use the petite dice because sometimes, if you have kids who like to pick out the tomatoes, they don't notice them as much if they're petite diced. And I like the Italian style because that's some of the flavors that I put in this dish anyway, so it just gives it a little bit of boost, a little bit extra seasoning. And then the last thing I have here is my little jar of seasoning ingredients. So what I've done here basically is I took a little half-pint jelly jar and I put in 1/3 cup of freeze-dried chopped onions, 1/4 cup of dehydrated mixed bell pepper. And then I put in a tablespoon of Italian seasoning, a teaspoon of garlic powder, and I added 1/2 teaspoon each of salt and black pepper. And that is all the seasoning ingredients that I would typically use in my chop suey. Now, if you don't have the freeze-dried and dehydrated vegetables, you could just leave those out and this dish would still be fine. But my traditional recipe does use the chopped onions and bell peppers. And then I have a bottle of water here, just a regular 16.9 ounce bottle of drinking water. And that means everything we need for the whole recipe is right in the bag because this is going to be a 1-pot pasta meal. And what that means is it's a little bit different from the way I would typically do American Chop Suey if I was cooking it from scratch with fresh ingredients. If I was using all fresh ingredients, I would fry up my hamburger with my peppers and onions, chopped peppers and onions. Then I would add my tomato products and cook the sauce first, and I would boil the pasta separately in a separate pot of water, and then I would mix it all together. And the problem with that is during emergency situations, like that uses a lot of water. You need a lot of water to boil your macaroni. Then you're just dumping it out down the drain. So in an emergency, when water is a very precious resource and you might not have running water, you might be just using your stored water, we don't want to waste all that water. So this recipe cooks in a different way where everything goes all together and the pasta just absorbs the amount of water it needs and everything thickens up and it's the perfect consistency when it's done. You could also include a Dollar Tree sized can of Parmesan cheese. This is only 2.5 ounces, so their size bottle is really perfect for a single meal like this. All right, let's put these in the bag. These are the bags that I use. I get these on Amazon. I really like these because they have a firm like cardboard bottom on them and they have that nice square bottom, so they sit on the shelf nicely. They're a good sturdy material, so you can use them over and over again. This one's actually been used several times, so you can probably tell. I buy these in 2 different sizes. This is the smaller size of the 2 that I buy. I can fit this meal in the smaller size. I like to add a chalkboard label where I can write the name of the dish. So when this is standing on the shelf, I can see the name of the dish. And then I also add a pocket. This is a self-adhesive product that I buy myself separately and I attach it to the bag. This is a CD pocket and I like to put the recipe, the instructions, and then on the other side of this, it has the ingredients so that if I use this meal and I want to refill with the same meal, that's easy to do. Or if you give this as a gift to someone and they use it and want to refill it with the same ingredients. Sometimes I print these on the computer, sometimes I handwrite them, it just depends. You don't have to buy bags like this. You could always use any type of bag, a Ziploc bag, a small gift bag from the Dollar Tree I've used before, and you could just tuck your recipe right inside the bag if you don't want to do anything fancy like putting the pocket on the outside. I get a lot of questions about what I use, so I will put links to everything down in the description below the video in case you want to check it out. So let's add our ingredients. I'm going to add my Hamburg. I'm going to add my macaroni noodles. Adding my can of diced tomatoes, my can of tomato soup, and my jar of seasoning ingredients. I'm also going to add my bottle of water. And now my bag is all ready to go on the shelf. But instead of putting this one on the shelf, I'm going to cook this up for you right now so you can see how it comes together and what it looks like when it's done. I'm going to use my butane emergency stove to cook this meal. This is what we keep on hand to use for cooking if the power's out. It works really well. It's inexpensive. And these are generally considered safe for using indoors. They're used in catering a lot. They're used in a lot of other countries, pretty commonly indoors. I do recommend always having a carbon monoxide detector and a fire extinguisher nearby whenever you're using any kind of alternative fuel or alternative appliance. This is the fuel they use. Just going to get a nice big soup pot to cook this in. And I'm going to start by adding my ground beef. I'm going to open this up and put this in. Now you can see that the Keystone ground beef is just beef and sea salt. That's it. That's the only ingredients that are in here. Just like if I would have canned this up at home. And this actually turns out better than my home canned ground beef. I have canned ground beef myself so many different ways, with broth, with water. I've dry packed it. I've done all sorts of different things. And this is still better than mine. Now you see there's going to be a little bit of fat and natural juices inside the can. That is just what comes out of the beef. And you can take out some of that fat if you want with like a spoon or whatever. You can also use it if you were in an emergency and you needed some oil for sauteing or something. You could actually use it for sauteing. It's just beef fat, which is basically tallow. And in an emergency, you also might want to leave more of that fat right in the meat because that's going to give you more calories, which might be really important if you're stuck in that emergency for a long period of time. And the amount of fat and broth and juice that you get inside the can can vary depending on the can that you have, because this is a natural product, and like any other natural product, it's going to be different every time. Now, a lot of that fat just stays stuck to the inside of the can, so you don't even have to worry about it. It just gets left behind. I picked out a little bit extra that was easy to get out, and I'm not going to worry about any of the rest of it. It's going to add good flavor and a nice mouthfeel to this pot of chopped suey. I'm just breaking the ground beef up like you would if you were cooking it from raw, crumbling it up. And now I'm going to add all of my other ingredients except for the macaroni. So I'm adding my tomato soup. Use my good can scraping spatula to get this all out. Need to get a new one of these. This is probably the most used spatula in my kitchen because it's so good at emptying cans, and it's seen better days. I've been using this pretty regularly for many, many years. Next, I'm going to add the diced tomatoes. This one actually has a pop top on it, so it's handy if you have the pop top, but keep an eye out. Make sure you have a can opener, a manual can opener in your emergency supplies, or sometimes I'll even throw a little military style can opener into each bag because those are pretty inexpensive and they fit right in. Next, I'm going to add my seasoning ingredients, and I'm going to add my bottle of water. Now, what I like to do when I have a tomato can and I have a water, a liquid ingredient, is I like to use the water to rinse out the can, get every last bit of that flavor and goodness and nutrition out of this can. Now I'm just going to give this a stir to combine everything. I'm going to put on the heat just on high because I just want to bring this up to a boil pretty quickly. You can continue to break up the Hamburg if you need to against the side of the pan. If you have any big clumps that you didn't get in the first go round. Putting the lid on will help it come up to a boil more quickly and save a little bit of fuel. Now that it's come up to a simmer, I have added my macaroni noodles, and so I'm just going to give it a stir. Make sure that the noodles aren't going to stick to each other or stick to the bottom of the pot. And now I'm going to lower the heat so that this can just simmer. And I'm going to cover it right back up because we want all of the liquid now to stay in the pot so that it can cook our macaroni. So this is going to cook for about 8 minutes because that's usually the cook time on the macaroni. So whatever it takes to get the macaroni all done and absorb the liquid is the cook time that we need. So I will see you back here in about 8 minutes or so. You do want to stir this occasionally throughout the cooking process just to make sure that nothing sticks and that the macaroni cooks evenly. All right, so it has been about 8 minutes. Let's see how this is coming along. It is looking really, really good. There's a little bit more liquid in there than I would like, but I think people have their chop suey or goulash different amounts of liquidiness, but I am going to taste the macaroni and see if the macaroni has gotten fully cooked. That's definitely cooked. That's tender. I am going to let this go about 1 more minute with the lid off, and then I'm going to turn it off and I'm going to let it set for about 5 or 10 minutes. That's going to let it cool off because this would be too hot for my family anyways, and that's also going to help it just to kind of set up and firm up and absorb all that extra liquid. Usually when I make chop suey, you know, the traditional way, I always let it set for a little bit after it's done anyways for all of those sauce flavors to combine and to kind of soak into the macaroni. So I'm going to let this go 1 more minute and then let it set for 5 or 10, and then it'll be ready to eat. All right, so that's simmered for 1 more minute with the lid off, and it already is looking better. And this is actually looking really, really good. So I am still going to let this set that 5 or 10 minutes because that is what I would typically do. And then we're going to serve it up. All right, this has been sitting for about 10 minutes. Now look at it. This looks amazing. This is absolutely perfect. I'm telling you, that magical 10-minute rest period is the key for so many dishes. If you watch this channel a lot, you'll probably know that I do that a lot. I let it rest about 10 minutes at the end with a lot of different dishes, and it makes such a difference. All right, let's serve this up because this looks delicious, and I can't wait to dig in. Look at that. All right, let's give it a try. That is absolutely perfection. That is delicious. This is like the classic comfort food from my childhood. Like if I had to come up with one dish, this would be it. And this came out perfect. Honestly, I think I might switch to doing this one pot method all the time when I do my chop suey because this worked out perfect. Now I'm going to show you how a few changes to this basic recipe can give us a whole new dish. A couple of simple swaps will turn this American chop suey into a hearty chili mac. Let's get started. The ingredients for the chili mac, you can see they're very similar to the chop suey. This is just a little bit different variation. So I've got my 28-ounce can of Keystone Hamburg. I've got my can of diced tomatoes, and for this one I'm using the chili ready. So these are just chili seasoned, just like the other ones were Italian seasoned. And then I've got my tomato soup, and you can see this is something new. This is something that Campbell's just came out with. It's a spicy tomato soup, and this was actually what inspired me to do this recipe because I saw this and I thought, oh, that would probably be good in a chili mac. I'm not sure what else this would be good in. We go through a lot of regular tomato soup. My kids love it with grilled cheese. We use it in the chop suey. Depending on how this tastes, I'm going to do a little taste of it before I put it in and just see what I think we might use it in besides that. But I think it'll be good in the chili mac. If you aren't into spicy and you're afraid of trying this or you can't find it, then just use the regular tomato soup. Then I've got a can of beef broth here. This is going to take the place of the water in the other recipe. I've got a can of chili beans. This is an addition. So this is just the beans and the chili sauce. And then I've got a few jars here. I've got my seasoning jar. So this is a little bit different. I did start with the onions and peppers. It's 1/3 cup of freeze-dried chopped onions and then 1/4 cup of dehydrated diced bell peppers. If you do a dehydrated like onion flakes, you're going to want to use less because freeze-dried behaves a lot like fresh. We measure it like fresh. Dehydrated, you want to use less because it shrinks and shrivels. So and if you don't have either one of these, the onions or the peppers, don't let that deter you from making this recipe. Just go ahead and make it without it. It will be fine without it. It is something that I typically put in my recipe, so I like to use them because I have them on hand. Besides the onions and peppers, the rest of the seasonings, I did a tablespoon of chili powder, 2 teaspoons of cumin, and then 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. If you don't use the onions and peppers and you just have a little bit of seasonings, you could use something like a small Mylar bag or a small baby food jar or something to contain your seasonings. I use those a lot if I just have a little bit of seasoning in my recipe. And then I've got a jar under here that just has just about a cup of freeze-dried shredded cheddar cheese. Shredded cheddar is something a lot of people like to put on or in their chili mac. Some people even put it on their goulash. I'm not sure about chop suey. I have never put cheddar cheese on my chop suey, but I thought it would be really good on the chili mac. So if you don't have a freeze-dried shredded cheddar and you are not ready to add that to your pantry just yet, you could just leave that out. And then I've got my 2 cups of elbow macaroni. I just fill the wide mouth pint jar right up to the top. It's about half a pound. I don't measure it. I just fill it as full as I can get it and put on the lid. And then back here, I do have one small 8-ounce bottle of water. This is just to rehydrate this freeze-dried cheddar cheese. So if you're not using that cheddar cheese, you might not need this water. This cheese is only going to use about 3 to 4 tablespoons of the water. You need very little water to rehydrate the cheese. So there will be some water left over. So if you do this, you could add something like a Just Add Water cornbread mix. This uses 3/4 of a cup of water to mix it up. So it would be the perfect amount. And cornbread is really good with chili. And if you don't have an off-grid way of baking that cornbread and you are using this meal in a power outage, you could always just fry it up like pancakes in a skillet and you could have your cornbread that way. If you don't want to add the cornbread, you could just have a little bit of water left over for someone to drink, or it could give you some extra moisture if you end up needing it for your macaroni, because depending on how much macaroni you end up with, everyone measures a little bit differently. So you may need a little bit more water. And if you're not using the cheese or the cornbread mix, I would just leave this out. All right, let's get this in the bag. I'm going to start with my hamburger and then my macaroni. Put in my diced tomatoes, my tomato soup, my seasoning packet, my beef broth, my chili beans, my freeze-dried cheddar cheese, and my water. This does fit in this bag. It's pretty full. This is the smaller of the 2 sizes I use, so you could use the larger bag. And this bag is ready to go on the shelf. But right now, I'm going to fix it up so you can see how this meal comes together and what it looks like when it's done as well. Before I get started, I do just want to get this cheese started with the water so that it'll be already refreshed back to fresh cheese in order to put on top when this is done cooking. Now, a cup of cheese calls for about 3.5 tablespoons of cold water to make this back into cheese. And you don't want to overdo it with the water for sure. And I think I have just under a cup in here, so I'm going to start with 3 tablespoons and see if that will do it. Now, ideally, I would have a container that was a little bit larger than the amount of cheese I had so that I could put the lid on and sort of tumble it around and get the water really distributed. I don't have that large of a container this time, but I have done this before and just been able to do it in this size of a container. So hopefully that'll work for me again this time. Really just need to get that cheese all moistened with the water and give it a little bit of time to absorb. And it should be about ready to go by the time our chili mac is done. All right, I'm going to put the lid back on. Just kind of give this a little bit of a shake and try to get that liquid all sort of distributed. And I will do this a few times. I'm going to go ahead and stick this in my fridge while it comes back to life. But if you didn't have refrigeration, you could just leave it sitting out and it would be just fine. Just like with the chop suey, I'm going to be using my butane stove to cook this and my big soup pot. And I'm going to start again by opening up my hamburger and putting that right in the pot and breaking it up. Now, I always get my Keystone meats at Walmart. I was actually really excited recently when my store started carrying them in the store because I used to have to order them, but I could always order them right from the website. So if your store hasn't carried them in the past, check and see if they carry them now, because maybe they started like mine did. And if not, I will have links down below to where you can order them from Walmart's website. If you have a Kroger or a Giant Eagle or a Meijer supermarket near you, then I believe they also carry them as well, but I don't have those stores near me. You can also order direct from the Keystone website, but you have to pay shipping. You have to order a whole case and you have to pay shipping when you order from there. So from Walmart, I'm able to order just 1 or 2 cans at a time if I want to, and I am able to get free shipping even when I didn't have it available in the store. There, that looks great. And I'm just going to break this meat up just like I did before. You can see in this can, the fat was really, there's not a lot that came out with the meat. It all kind of stuck around one edge of the can. And so that was really handy. But like I said, every can is going to be a little bit different because it is just a natural product, just like you would can on your own. If you do can your own meats, you can use your own canned meats here. This is a really big can. I think it's almost as big as a quart. So you would probably want to use a quart for this. I personally, I do can my own meat, but when I put together a meal in a bag like that, I don't like putting my glass canning jars in there, especially if I'm thinking of giving it away to someone else, which I sometimes do with these. So I like to use the cans. I feel like they hold up a little bit better and they definitely have a longer shelf life than the home canned. All right, so now I'm going to add the rest of my ingredients except for the macaroni, just like we did last time. So I've got my diced tomatoes, my tomato soup, and I have got to take a little taste of this. I just want to see how it is and how spicy it is. Oh, that's got a little kick to it. That is spicy. It's good though. It tastes just like regular tomato soup, just with a little bit of a kick. So if you are a person who likes spicy food, I think you're really going to love this, especially if you like tomato soup, Campbell's tomato soup. Now, if you have any other recipes that use Campbell's tomato soup or any other ways that you use it, leave them down in the comments below because I am looking for lots of different ways to use, especially this spicy soup. I bought a whole case of it because I was able to find it cheapest per can that way. So I'd love to find more different recipes to use this in. Next, I'm adding my chili beans. And then finally, my beef broth. I am going to use my beef broth again to rinse out my tomato cans. Now I'm just going to add my bunch of seasonings here and go ahead and get this all mixed together. Oh, this smells good. It smells like chili. You can continue to break up any bigger chunks of meat that you see, unless you want bigger chunks of meat. All right, so I've got all of the ingredients in here and all stirred up. So I'm going to turn on the heat way up high, bring this up to a simmer as quickly as I can, and then add the macaroni. I don't know if anybody else does this, but I like to keep my empty can handy and use it just to hold my dirty spoon instead of a spoon rest, and then recycle the can when I'm done. That could be handy in an emergency as well. All right, so now that I see this starting to simmer, I'm going to go ahead and add my macaroni. I'm going to get the macaroni all stirred in. Now you do want to stir this kind of frequently, at least for the first couple of minutes, just to make sure that the macaroni doesn't stick to itself or to the bottom of the pot. But once it gets going, it doesn't need to be stirred as frequently. So I've got my macaroni in there. I'm going to go ahead and add the lid. I'm going to turn the heat down. I just want to keep this at a simmer, enough for it to cook the macaroni, but not to be boiling and burn on the bottom. So I'm going to let this go for about 8 minutes, which is the cook time on the macaroni, and then we'll see how close we are to being done. All right, it's been 8 minutes. The macaroni is tender. I do think I'm going to give this 1 more minute simmering without the lid, like I did with the chop suey, because that worked pretty well. All right, so that's been 1 minute. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. I am going to cover it up, and I'm going to let it set for 10 minutes. And at that point, it's going to be ready to put on the cheese and let that just melt for another, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes. Then we'll be ready to serve. All right, so 10 minutes have passed. Let's get the steam out of there. And this is all ready for the cheese. This dish is going to be just a little bit soupier than the chop suey. It's just the nature of the dish. It has the chili sauce and the beans. So there's the chili mac, and then here's our cheese, all refreshed and ready to go on top. This chili is still plenty hot to melt this cheese. So I'm going to get the cheese on. You could stir the cheese in if you wanted. You definitely want to rehydrate it first before you stir it in, because that's how it's going to melt best. If you don't, it doesn't really melt. But whether you want to stir it in or just sprinkle it over the top like this is up to you. Or you could even sprinkle it across each individual serving as you serve them. That's entirely up to you. All right, I'm going to give this just 3 to 5 more minutes, and then we'll be ready to eat. All right, so I let this set 5 more minutes, and look at that. The cheese is all melted and gooey, and this is ready to serve. Oh my goodness, that looks amazing. All right, the hardest part is going to be keeping the cheese on top. Let's see if we can do this. That's not too bad. There we go. Our chili mac is ready to eat. I cannot wait to dig in and try this chili mac. That is really, really good. Super, super yummy. It has a little bit of a kick, but honestly, I don't think that tomato soup is too spicy. It really kind of blends in, and it doesn't make it too spicy for me anyways. This is delicious. I hope you enjoy these new recipes to add to your meal in a bag collection. These are classic comfort food, hearty and delicious. Having a collection of these meals in your pantry means you won't have to stress about what to feed your family in an emergency. But they're also great for things like camping trips or to gift to a person or a family that you care about to make sure that they always have food on hand. And they're actually really great to turn to when you just need a quick meal, but you don't have the time to plan or go to the grocery store. This also helps keep your stash rotated. No more emergency food sitting around for 10 years and then getting thrown away. So wasteful. Check out the notes below the video for links to find everything you need for these meals, including the best place to buy Keystone beef. Having Keystone in your pantry provides such peace of mind and makes it easy to whip up family favorites anytime you want. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave me Keystone emojis down in the comments and check out this playlist next for some more great emergency meal kit recipes for your pantry. I'm Jara with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see you next time.